We're live. Hi, Kaely.
Hey, Fallon.
How's it going?
Good. How about you?
Good. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to talk to us today and go through the course material, which you did it in like lightning speed, considering you are, which is pretty amazing. So if you wanted to share a little bit more about your background and then maybe some of the things that have kind of changed about your mindset with nutrition and how it affects the body versus now knowing more about how it also affects the brain.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Kaely. I'm a registered dietitian and I specialize in women's health. So I run a virtual private practice where I help women work on predominantly hormone and digestive issues. And in that realm, I see a lot of like mood instability as it relates to hormone imbalances. I see a lot of anxiety and depression. I see postpartum mood changes. And then, of course, the brain is always fascinating to me. I have a personal family history of Alzheimer's that's pretty significant. So, like anything having to do with supporting the brain, sign me up for it. And I think the female brain is particularly fascinating and something that's just not studied or talked about a whole lot. So I always had the interest there. And obviously I had the interest in food and helping people manage things through food. But going through this training program really helped me connect the dots of I understand the nutrition recommendations, but now I can see what aspects of brain health that directly influences. And I think that really helps people connect why a certain behavior is so important and so beneficial to actually know, what part of the brain is this supporting and how. So it's been like a more technical understanding of how to apply nutrition, I'd say, is the biggest change.
I love that. And especially with a family history of Alzheimer's, just removing sugar alone and how much that can decrease your chances. I think that's really interesting. And just in my experience with a few people that I've been close to that did rapidly decline, I always thought it was interesting. And please tell me if you see this as just something common with certain disorders. They would just obsessively, compulsively eat ice cream. It would get, the more they would crave sugar and dairy. And I just thought that was really interesting. And it's been, especially for patients that are older, I know that's one of the hardest things to do is to give up sugar and dairy because there's at least one kind of sneak in there.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I had never thought about that before because I typically don't work with an elderly population, but both of my paternal grandparents passed away with Alzheimer's. And actually, I do remember them both having pretty significant sweet tooths. Most of the time I knew them, but particularly toward the end of their lives. Interesting.
Yeah, it was kind of a sad moment because we used to have family dinners every Sunday with this couple live across the street. And every Sunday we would have like a little bit of dessert with a good healthy dinner. And then the more she progressed, the more she just wanted to eat more ice cream and she wanted us to eat ice cream. And she wanted us to have a second bowl because she had already forgotten that we'd already had one bowl. And it was just like really sad. But
So sad.
so empowering because there's so many amazing other options out there, not just for sugar and dairy in general, but even just ice cream flavors. Soy Delicious has dairy-free, sugar-free, and all these other yummy things that I think for a lot of people that are making certain switches, there is kind of that one food that they get stuck on and have a hard getting off of. Do you see any certain clients that you work with gravitating towards certain things?
Yeah, I think sugar cravings is big even in the population that I'm with. I think that's probably big for everybody, particularly in the US.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the foundational nutrition work that we do is focused on helping them stabilize their blood sugar because they typically have grown up thinking, oh, I just have a sweet tooth, or oh, I have no willpower, that's just me. And like physiologically, that's not the case. And I think it offloads some of the burden when you realize it's not about willpower, it's about your blood sugars all over the place all day. And, the way the body deals with that is by telling you to grab some sugar because it's quick and it can solve the problem. So helping them build in some frameworks to keep blood sugar steady can help really, really eliminate a lot of those cravings. But then, like you were talking about, there are some really great options out there that can help bridge that gap too. Because there's always, there's a fine line between doing your best nutritionally and also enjoying your life. And it's nice to have some options in there that maybe aren't quite as harmful or can still fit in the context of a healthy diet.
Absolutely. And what would you say are some of the big things that you work on kind of changing that framework with your clients?
For blood sugar balance specifically? Yeah.
Yes.
So that has to do with consistent eating times throughout the day. So a lot of the women that I work with are moms or working moms, and sometimes just forget to eat throughout the day. And they end up like ravenously hungry at 3 p.m. And it's like, there's just you can't really think about your food choices at that point. It's really whatever you see first as you come into the house.
Yeah.
So having some structure to when we're eating and feeding ourselves on a consistent basis. And then within those meals, making sure there's always a source of protein, some good healthy fats, and then fiber containing carbs predominantly, so that we've got this like time release of the carbohydrates that can stay with us and keep things steady instead of being, in and out super quick.
Do you feel like some people kind of freak out when you say we're going to steer away from these carbs and move to these carbs, and just the education around what white bread is versus quinoa and kind of how that impacts digestion?
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's some initial like emotional response to giving up some of their favorite foods. And then on the opposite side of that coin, I've got people who maybe have come from a very low carb dieting perspective, and it's new to them to actually bring them in and feel comfortable with that. And we're actually talking about eating more at meal and snack times instead of just grabbing, a handful of cereal on the way out the door. It's making sure we've got a protein and a fat in the mix. So it's like totally changing the way that we think about food, instead of only focusing on calories to actually the composition of those meals.
That is so cool. And I love how you're saying some people have an emotional response to giving up certain things. So just your background in mental health and how that ties into the nutrition work, I think is one of the things that makes your practice so special. Did you
Thanks.
Talk more about that? And
Sure. So, I by no means am
kind of brag on yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I myself am not a mental health professional. So I am a dietitian by training. But I do just really nerd out about the way that different aspects of our diet and even our hormones interact with our brain and elicit different emotions and different responses and different connections to food. And so I think that in that context, I'm able to speak to it a little bit more technically. And I tend to draw clients that also really want to nerd out over that info and appreciate that info. And then within my practice, I refer out to therapists all the time. And over the years, I've just realized that people tend to be more successful if we've got somebody in that realm on our team, and that we really shouldn't be approaching health from like a one person on your roster standpoint. We should have a concerted effort from different people in different specialties. And that mental health piece has been probably the biggest game changer of other, disciplines that I've collaborated with. So I recommend therapy quickly, and I recommend it often for honestly most clients that I see. I think we can all benefit. It's preventative health for our head.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah, it really does take a group effort. And I love that you have your little niche and specialty, so that when we're working on patients together, we know they're in good hands as far as implementing some of those changes. Because I know for some people, therapy is the hardest thing. And then for other people, getting off the sugar is the hardest thing. Mm-hmm. So just having that balance of care and concern, I think, is really amazing.
Yeah, it's nice to have both, because I think we're just more successful when you've got both pieces.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, any other things you wanted to share about the course or ways to find you?
Sure. So what I love about the course is, like I mentioned, I didn't have a deep understanding of different parts of the brain and how specific nutrients and supplements from the Brain MD line work to help with that. And so that was really helpful for me as a practitioner to have more background on why certain things work and how they work. And there were a lot of cool resources, like ways that you can assess people if a full brain scan isn't an option for them, maybe financially or where they're located, like that web neuro or the brain typing, I think is really helpful. And then I also just wanted to mention in my realm, another big connection between nutrition and a lot of this mental health stuff is that gut brain axis. And that's something that I do work on a lot with my clients, and I think is a new and really interesting area of focus. So really what's going on in your digestive tract is having a profound impact on what's going on in your brain. And so that's something that I can work on in my scope, is helping people work on their digestion through food, lifestyle, and supplementation. And that has a direct impact on their brain health, which is really cool.
Awesome. I love that. And I love that, again, you just kind of went through the material so quickly and just learned it really fast because you're healthy. And then how can people find you?
I do most of my like educating and hanging out over on Instagram. It's at Kaely RD. My name's spelled a little weird. It's Kaely.
I
And
love it.
my website's the same, kaelyrd.com. And then I do have a Facebook page linked to those, but I rarely remember to share posts across the channels. So really Instagram and my website is where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited for you. And thank you again so much for doing this.
Of course, I'm excited to put this info to use.
Yes, me too.
Thanks so much, Fallon.
You're welcome.